Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware. Today we're taking a look at this. This is an R9 290. This is a 2013 graphics card that is oddly enough still very relevant here in 2021. Largely due to not just this card still actually performing fairly well even in modern titles, but also largely due to the GPU shortage and the fact that this is one of the few cards out there you can get for less than an arm and a leg or a kidney on the open market. So we're going to take a look at this thing. Now, as we get started here, those of you that have R9 290s out there in the audience, let us know in those comments down below how your card is doing for you here in 2021, especially in relation to, are there any games that are truly giving the R9 290 some serious issues? So the R9 290 is an interesting card to say the least because of what it was pitted up against back when it was actually relevant on the newer market, and also now where it stands with the used market. It is priced right now at about $200 to $225 on eBay in the United States. So you may have better luck getting a card at a little bit cheaper than that, but that's what one probably is going to cost you right now in sort of mid-June 2021. With that being said, a lot of the cards out there are the blower style cards, and those are ones that I would not recommend for the R9 290 because they will absolutely sound like a jet engine taking off from a large airport with, well, several other jet engines laying around and also blowing at full speed. Basically, this thing is a very loud card if you have the blower style cooler. That being said, if you find one with a 2 or a 3 fan design like the Sapphire Tri-X that I have here, then you may want to look at it if you're sort of considering that $200 to $225 GPU range. The other card to keep an eye on though would be the GTX 970 because the cards are going to perform very similarly in most titles. That being said, do take a look at the specific titles you plan on running because there are titles where the R9 290 is going to score a nice significant win over a 970 and vice versa. So definitely take titles into account when you're picking between an R9 290 and a GTX 970, in addition to the pricing, which by the way, a 970 is going to cost you almost identical pricing on the used market right now. Now, back in November of 2013, this card would have cost you right at $500, and that was what its original MSRP was. Now, something like a Sapphire Tri-X likely would have cost you a little bit more than $500 because it is a custom cooler design. It's likely a custom actual PCB. I don't know that this is a reference PCB, not really sure on that front one way or the other, but the cooler is significantly better than the stock cooler that would have come with these cards, the blower style AMD cooler. So one of these cards likely would have cost a little bit more than $500, but you were going to pay at least $500 for one of these cards. So 7.5 years after launch, we're going to take a look at this card with a few different titles here, both esports style titles as well as more modern AAA titles that are going to be a little bit more demanding on the GPU. We are using the completely normal test bench that I've been using for a while now. That's the Ryzen 5600X. That's just left as stock, and again, with a card like this, a 5600X is not going to be our bottleneck in the system. We do have a 2x16 gigabyte kit of RAM that's running at 3200 megahertz, so we have 32 gigabytes of total system RAM, and the card itself, by the way, has 4 true gigabytes of VRAM. If you're somebody that's rocking a 970, or if you just sort of decided to go with this over a 970, you may be quick to point out that a GTX 970 does not have a true 4 gigabytes of VRAM, even though that doesn't seem to have a huge impact on performance for the 970. It is worth noting, this is actually a true 4 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, as per the usual, we are going to get started with Fortnite on the low graphics preset, and here we saw an average FPS of 210, a 1% low of 152, and a 0.1% low of 55 FPS, and by and large, this is an excellent gaming experience as we would expect with a very competent CPU paired with a very competent GPU with this particular title, as Fortnite is not overly demanding to begin with, and when paired with that competent CPU, the R9 290 is able to stretch its legs a little bit here. And with these esports titles, one of the compliments I like to pay out is while I was playing this title, I forgot that I was actually benchmarking a GPU, and that's basically what you're looking for, especially when you're going back to an older GPU that you're just trying to use as maybe a stopgap solution. If you're looking to buy one of these things here in 2021, you're really looking for a GPU to get you through the GPU shortage, so you can likely buy a newer, better GPU. So if you can find one of these things on the used market that gives you a good gaming experience, that's ultimately what you're looking for, and the R9 290 delivers in this title. Overwatch is much the same story, with the average FPS at 205 on the high graphics preset. The 1% low was there at 142, and the 0.1% low was 126. And Overwatch continues to be one of those titles that not only performs well on old hardware in general, but also performs very smoothly. And that's what we're seeing here with the 1% and 0.1% lows. The frame times are not jumping all over the place, and again, we get a great experience with the R9 290. Then we get into some more demanding games, and we're starting here with The Witcher 3 on the high graphics preset. The average FPS was just shy of 60 at 57, the 1% low at 48, and 0.1% low down there at 20. And that 0.1% low largely comes as a result of some of those frame stutters that you see a lot of the time when you're loading into the game in The Witcher 3, as I do start the benchmarking run pretty early on. So as I started moving around the city a little bit, we did see some stuttering that pretty quickly smoothed itself out. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to that 0.1% low, with that 1% low being a very respectable number, and especially considering that everything did seem to smooth out. Now, if you're looking for 60 FPS across all of your titles and you're playing The Witcher 3, you definitely do have some room here at 1080p to knock down settings just a little bit to get your average over that 60 FPS mark. And then moving on to Cyberpunk 2077, 1080p on the low graphics preset, we saw an average FPS of 45, a 1% low of 35, and a 0.1% low of 32. And outside of a couple of stutters that were definitely present with this title, this was actually a very playable experience, and it's one where you could actually afford to up the settings just a little bit if you wanted a little bit more eye candy, as I'm really not impressed with this title on the low graphics preset, at least the way the title looks. It's just sort of a title that I think is best experienced at the highest eye candy levels possible, and that might be due to it just being a little bit more of a slower paced style game anyways. It's not like you're really needing Twitch reactions with this type of title. So if it were me, I would likely up the settings just a little bit to get a little bit more eye candy, but regardless, you could absolutely have a good experience playing through this game with this GPU. And finally, Hitman 3 on low settings in general once again gives us a great experience with this GPU. We saw an average FPS of 102, a 1% low there of 81, and a 0.1% low of 77. So once again, the R9 290 is very competent in modern games. Sometimes you do have to knock settings down to get those higher frame rates, but this is definitely a GPU that could serve as a stopgap solution based on these numbers, where even if you're playing some of the most demanding modern titles out there, you can definitely get a playable game out of this GPU, even though it's 7.5 years old now. So the R9 290 should definitely be on the short list of potential GPUs to get you through this GPU shortage and onto the other side, where you can actually buy a newer GPU that's gonna perform great across the board. And that really is the conclusion with the R9 290. At the right price, around $200, if you get one that is not the blower style cooler, then you actually may have yourself a great GPU to get yourself through the GPU shortage that we're currently going through. Now, if you're only able to find ones that have the blower style cooler, I would honestly look more towards the GTX 970, as the pricing is extremely similar, and a GTX 970 is going to be a little bit less power hungry. It's going to run a little bit less toasty. You're not going to be able to scramble your eggs on top of your PC when you're running a GTX 970, especially because the GTX 970s seem to have a lot more of those custom cooler design cards out in the wild that are available, so you can buy those 2 and 3 fan design GTX 970s no problem, whereas they're a little bit more sparse with the R9 290. And that's almost certainly down to the fact that the GTX 970 just sold way better than the 290 back when these cards were originally launching and brand new on the market. But if you do find one of these R9 290s that does have 2 or 3 fan coolers on them, and the pricing is good, yeah, you can absolutely still get a really good gaming experience out of these, and if you're looking for that stopgap solution, then this should definitely be on your short list. But of course, those are just my thoughts on the R9 290. Those of you out there that have one of these cards, let us know in those comments down below what you still think of your R9 290. Are you still getting along fine with it, or are you desperately looking for an upgrade path and an upgrade solution? Let us know all your thoughts in those comments down below. If you like the video, give it a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things are very helpful for the channel. You can follow me both on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.